In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I have an interesting guest here with me today. I'm with JT Tompkins, and he is hailing over as the Chief Growth Officer over at Herrmann. And at Herrmann, they're basically looking at helping your organization to maximize your talent by really going into the cognitive diversity, by really figuring out, which types of people do you actually have within your team, and they have the so-called whole brain thinking approach, and to basically identify what are the capabilities of your team and how they should be working better together. So today we're going to be learning all about Herrmann and also how JT is thinking about growth. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lucas. Welcome. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and chat with you for a bit.
Of course, yeah. So maybe give us a quick overview. Herrmann, what is it all about in your own words?
Yeah, so Herrmann's been around for 40 years. This year's our 40th anniversary, and we've worked with some of the best companies around the world, helping them bring their whole brain to work. Right, that's what we say. The whole brain thinking model, science-based, and it's delivered through a suite of assessments, right, and applications, which is very important. And we do that on our talent intelligence platform. So if you think about it, Lucas, it's like creating an operating system for a firm that helps them build that team intelligence, eliminate the blind spots, and really use cognitive diversity insights in the flow of work.
Mm-hmm. So maybe tell us sort of what would be sort of like a typical approach. Like what would a typical company look like? Number one, that will be working with her, but also what do they do? What's service? Which problem do they tackle by bringing in Herrmann into their organization?
Yeah, so most of the Herrmann clients are enterprise. We do some SMB, but we do focus on the enterprise where we see the largest opportunity within a company that want to take the journey. Right, this is not. Whole brain thinking is not to be used as a quick fix, right? The issues in today's business are not very easily solved in one session or one workshop, et cetera. So we're looking for companies that are invested in their talent and going on the journey. So that's the client type. Where we spend a lot of time and where we do a lot of our work is with managers and teams in the overall organization, from the standpoint of most organizations are made up of teams. But managers, if you think of a manager, he or she has to manage different types of people, right? Different types of thinking styles and preferences, right? So our work in the whole brain model helps them get insights into the thinking preferences of their team members so they can manage each individual a little bit differently, right? Mm-hmm. And so it resonates more, helps with the communication, less conflict. What that does when you engulf it in the team, whole brain thinking, it helps the team be more productive, right? Because they're better communicating with each other's different thinking preference. We also have companies that say we're forming new teams, new project teams or whatever. They use whole brain thinking to form the team to make sure that it is an inclusive team of all the thinking preferences. And we've seen great benefit, great innovation from those teams.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Now, what would you say? Who's typically the champion within those organizations? Like, who brings Herrmann into the organization? Is that like an HR leader? Does it come from the C-suite? Like, who's having that oversight and foresight to bring in Herrmann?
It's a great question. I would tell you that the majority of the time it comes through our talent, the company's talent group, their learning organization. And we get a lot of clients that have moved from other organizations in talent and learning into a new organization, and they bring us in. Mm-hmm. We do quite a bit of work in the C-suite area with our chief thought leader Ann Herrmann, and roll out the journey from the top down. A lot of times it's with individual teams inside the organization, and then expands to different teams.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Now, how do these folks learn about Herrmann's? Like, sort of, guys been around for a while, so there's obviously a big word of mouth component to it. But how do people learn about you guys? What are the growth channels that you guys leverage?
So we obviously our website, right? We've spent some time on our website, and actually we're tweaking it as ongoing, right, to even get that more narrow focus around the use cases. We do social. We've got LinkedIn groups, etc. Ann Herrmann, who I mentioned earlier as our chief thought leader, and chairwoman. She does a lot of speaking engagements at conferences, has TEDx talks, etc. So we do get some recognition around that. But again, Lucas, I will tell you that a lot of the notoriety and leads and inquiries come from past individuals that were at our clients that have moved over to new firms, which is happening more and more these days, right? And they're bringing us with. And the reason they're bringing us with is because we're solving problems. And they've seen it, they've already experienced it, they've proved it out. And it's not just in the learning, we're seeing a little bit of a shift from just learning and talent into the business unit leaders, right? So we're doing more work with operational leaders, sales and marketing type leaders that want that collaboration and communication and be able to use that operating system that I mentioned to take their team and their department, their division to the next level.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned actually also the website there for a moment. I know we had a pre-chat prior to the call, and you're obviously overlooking outbound and inbound at both. Now, on the website in specifics, what do you personally perceive as sort of a strength of the website versus where do you even see further room for improvement? You mentioned you're continuously tweaking it. What's your perspective from a bird's eye perspective, let's say, on the page?
Yeah, we are right now. We're actually engaged with a firm that's helping us narrow the focus, right? So the positive and the sort of opportunity, if you will, is we've been in business for 40 years. We've helped a lot of companies with a lot of different issues, right? With a lot of different problems and challenges that they were facing the list is very, very long. What we want to do is we found a sweet spot in that manager and teams area. We want to narrow that focus. Not that we won't be able to solve those problems for those managers and teams, but narrow the focus down into more around where the issues and the challenges get solved.
Yep.
Right. And our website will start, again, reflecting it. We're not going to change our model. We're not going to change what the value propositions, but we're really going to try to narrow it down a bit. And that starts with the website. And the website flows out into the rest of the messaging.
I mean, your website really has the who and who's of companies there. Like it's actually quite impressive. You guys, if you head over to thinkherrmann.com, you can have a quick look at having some good labels. If your company is trying to get some good labels, you can get some nice inspiration there. Very good.
Thank you.
Cool. So, okay, no, that makes complete sense. I would love to switch gears a little bit and talk with you a little bit about your role, right? So, as heading up, growth, you obviously, as we just mentioned, you have outbound and inbound channels, in your organization. What does a day look like? What are the typical types of projects that you are personally engaged in?
Yeah. So, and just a quick story. I've been at Herrmann for 7 years. I took a little bit of, I say time off. I took about 8-9 months sabbatical, where I was still involved in the business and doing a lot of advisory work and on the board, etc. And so I was running the global revenue, right? So I was in the trenches. I was, in the customer meetings, etc., etc. Took that sabbatical. When I came back, that we felt that my role should be more in the growth area, right? Mm-hmm. So what the growth area looks like to me is when you have one customer and you have processes built and journeys built, et cetera, playbooks, will that still work with 100, 1,000, 100,000, right? As opposed to just getting in there and getting the job done. It's how do the processes scale? How does the products scale, right? So we've got 40 years. So we've got a lot of processes, a lot of procedures, a lot of structure, but it wasn't necessarily always built with the scalability and the changing environment, right? The changing landscape. So to get to answer your question, what a day in the life of JT looks like is really around looking at our processes that are going to help us scale. Everything from onboarding, right, to client journey, to sales process. And one big one that I spend quite a bit of time on is partnerships, right? So who are we looking at? Has our partner profile changed from somebody that may take our whole brand content and embed it into their offerings to moving into keeping that, but moving also into the integration. As I mentioned, whole brain thinking is platform based, but we also want to bring it to where companies, managers, and teams are already working.
Makes a whole lot of sense, and appreciate bringing it in, and actually having that role, having that scale role, operational scalability in there is going to be so helpful for all the different teams that are that you're sort of supervision. That's very interesting. Actually, I don't hear that very often, that somebody's actually taking that step back, right, and then looking at being able to scale all of these operations. So it makes a lot of sense.
It was good. The 8 months were good learning, a good introspective learning.
Makes sense. Now, I got some rapid fire questions to wrap it up for today. You ready for those?
Sure. Shoot.
What's the last book you read or the last podcast you listened to?
Monetizing innovation. We're going through some pricing right now, so pricing discussions and changes. So trying to level up.
What's one single thing that your company is focused on the most at the moment?
I think it's the integrations, right? I would say it's the integrations to bringing the whole brain applications to where people are working.
What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
Handling the growth, right? That's what they pay me to do. So I need to ensure that as we continue to grow, and we're growing, as we continue to grow, that everything that we've built behind the scenes works well and doesn't blow up.
And for the very last question, right, I'd love to do a little bit of time travel with you, right? Let's go back to the days of John Carroll University, right? So now you're heading out of formal education into the world of business and growth, and you've been in different sales roles and been leading up sales teams. What's the one advice you would give yourself?
I think, Lucas, it would have to be slow down, right? Being in the sales and marketing and even at executive levels, we tend, as business moves fast, man. I mean, it moves fast. And sometimes we get caught up in that movement and try to fix, solve, just so we can move on to the next one, because there's so much to do. I really learned this, and I just mentioned that sabbatical. I really got that insight even more in depth on not everything's a fire. Not everything needs to be addressed right this second. We at Herrmann, this is where I eat my own cooking, right? We at Herrmann say, stop and think. And I would tell my younger, lighter self, stop and think. Really don't need to react and act, on demand. Take a step back, analyze the situation, and try to make that whole brain decision.
I think that was a golden nugget. Really appreciate that, JT. So thanks a lot for joining. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about Herrmann today, what's the one thing that they should remember?
Herrmann helps you bring your whole brain to work.
Sweet and simple. Thanks a lot for being a guest on Pathmark Presents.
Lucas, thank you. Appreciate it.